They were the faces we grew up with, the voices we recognized before we even saw the screen, the actors who made us laugh when life felt heavy, the stars who made villains unforgettable, heroes believable, and ordinary moments feel like cinema. And then, one by one, the news started coming in. A name from childhood. A face from a movie night. A voice from an animated show. A character we thought would live forever. Gone. But here is the strange thing about famous people. We never really know them, and somehow, when they leave, it still feels personal. Because they were there in our homes. They were on our televisions after school. They were in the movies we watched with family. They were part of the scenes we quoted, the songs we remembered, the shows we returned to when we needed comfort. So today, this is not just a list of names. This is a quiet walk through memories. A tribute to actors, entertainers, and performers who gave pieces of their lives to the screen and in return became part of ours. Some were legends with careers that stretched across generations. Some were familiar faces who never needed to be the biggest star in the room to leave a mark. Some became famous from one unforgettable role. Others appeared in dozens of films and shows, building a lifetime of work scene by scene, line by line, year by year. And some left far too soon. So before the noise of the internet moves on, before the next headline replaces the last one, let's take a moment, not to rush through their deaths, but to remember why their lives mattered. Because when an actor leaves this world, the final curtain may fall, but the performance does not disappear. It keeps playing. In reruns. In old films. In clips passed around by fans. In the memory of a single scene that once made someone feel less alone. And that is where we begin, with the stars whose work became bigger than a moment. Robert Duvall was not the kind of actor who needed to chase attention. He had the rare gift of making silence feel powerful. In The Godfather, he did not need to raise his voice to command the screen. As Tom Hagen, he became the calm center of a violent world, the man who understood power because he understood people. Then came Apocalypse Now, Tender Mercies, Lonesome Dove, The Great Santini, and so many other roles that proved one thing again and again. Robert Duvall did not simply act. He disappeared into people. He could play a soldier, a lawyer, a cowboy, a father, a preacher, a broken man, a proud man, a dangerous man, and each time it felt like we were watching a real life unfold in front of us. There are actors who perform for the camera, and then there are actors who make the camera feel like it is secretly watching the truth. Duvall belonged to that second group. His career became a reminder that greatness does not always need decoration. Sometimes, greatness is a look, a pause, a tired breath before a line. A man sitting alone with everything he has lost. For decades, he gave audiences performances that felt lived in, not manufactured. And that is why his legacy will not fade quickly. Because films change, styles change, stars come and go. But truth on screen always survives. And Robert Duvall gave cinema truth. Then there was Catherine O'Hara, a performer who could turn comedy into art without ever making it look difficult. For some people, she will always be the mother from Home Alone, rushing through airports, fighting through panic, trying to get back to her son. For others, she will forever be Moira Rose, dramatic, strange, stylish, hilarious, and somehow deeply human. But Catherine O'Hara was never just one role. She had timing that most actors spend a lifetime trying to master. She could say a line in a way nobody else would have imagined. She could make a facial expression feel like an entire paragraph. And even when she played characters who were ridiculous, she never treated them as empty jokes. That was her magic. She made strange people feel real. She made comedy feel intelligent. She made exaggeration feel emotional. When she appeared on screen, you leaned in, because you knew something unexpected might happen. A word might come out differently. A scene might bend around her. A small moment might become unforgettable. That kind of talent cannot be copied. It comes from instinct, courage, and years of understanding what makes people funny, insecure, proud, lost, loving, and absurd. Catherine O'Hara gave us characters who were larger than life. But underneath all the comedy, there was always a heartbeat. And that is why audiences loved her. Not just because she made people laugh, but because she made laughter feel personal. James Van Der Beek belonged to a different kind of memory. For a generation, he was tied to the feeling of growing up. Dawson's Creek was not just a show about teenagers, it was a show about wanting too much, feeling too deeply, and believing every heartbreak was the end of the world. As Dawson Leary, James Van Der Beek became the face of that emotional age when everything feels urgent. Friendship, love, dreams, rejection, identity, the future. He played a young man who wanted life to look like the movies, only to learn that real life is messier, sharper, and harder to control. That role made him famous, but his career did not stay frozen there. He later showed humor, self-awareness, and the ability to make fun of his own image. That takes humility. Not every actor can survive being strongly identified with one famous character. But he found ways to keep moving. He took the image people had of him and played with it. He reminded audiences that behind a teen idol was a working actor, a father, and a person with a life far beyond the screen. His passing felt especially painful because he was still young. Too young for people to speak about him in the past tense. Too young for fans to look back and realize that someone connected to their youth was gone. But that is what loss does. It makes time visible. It reminds us that the shows we watched as teenagers are now old enough to carry ghosts. And when people remembered him, they were not only remembering an actor, they were remembering who they were when they first watched him. Eric Dane also carried the weight of television memory. To many, he was Dr. Mark Sloan in Grey's Anatomy. McSteamy, a character who arrived with confidence, charm, and a smile that could change the energy of an entire scene. But what made the role last was not only the charm, it was the vulnerability underneath it. Mark Sloan could have been written as a simple, handsome doctor, the kind of character built only for attention. But Eric Dane gave him more. He gave him regret, loyalty, pain, growth. He made him someone viewers wanted to forgive, even when he made mistakes. Later in The Last Ship, he moved into a different kind of role, carrying the pressure of command, responsibility, and survival. And in Euphoria, he showed a darker, more disturbing side of performance, proving again that he was willing to step into uncomfortable places as an actor. Some performers are remembered because they were beloved. Others are remembered because they surprised us. Eric Dane did both. He had presence, but he also had range. He had the look of a leading man, but he was not afraid to play characters who were damaged, flawed, and morally complicated. That is what made his work stay with people. Because the best screen characters are never perfect. They are human. And Eric Dane knew how to show the cracks. Anthony Head gave us another kind of presence. A quieter one. A wiser one. For millions of fans, he will always be Rupert Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The librarian. The mentor. The watcher. The man with the books, the warnings, the dry humor, and the deep sadness behind his eyes. In a show filled with monsters, demons, teenage chaos, and supernatural danger, Anthony Head brought stability. He made Giles feel like the adult every young hero secretly needs. Someone who knows more than he says. Someone who can be strict, gentle, disappointed, proud, afraid, and brave all at once. But his career reached beyond Buffy. He appeared in Merlin, Ted Lasso, stage productions, comedies, dramas, and countless roles that showed his flexibility. Still, it is Giles that remains carved into the hearts of so many viewers. Because that character represented guidance, and guidance is one of the rarest things on television. He was not perfect. He carried guilt. He made mistakes. He had a past. But he cared. And Anthony Head made that care feel real. In Ted Lasso, he later played a very different kind of man, colder and sharper, proving that he could move from warmth to cruelty with complete control. That is acting. Not being loved in every role, but being believed. And he was believed. Whether he was protecting a slayer, ruling a kingdom, or playing a man audiences loved to hate, he brought intelligence to every scene. His death reminded fans how deeply a supporting character can shape a story. Because sometimes the person beside the hero becomes just as important as the hero. And sometimes the mentor becomes the memory that lasts longest. Chuck Norris was a different kind of icon. He belonged to the world of action, discipline, martial arts, and old-school toughness. For decades, his name carried a kind of myth. Walker, Texas Ranger. The Way of the Dragon. Missing in Action. The Expendables. But beyond the titles, Chuck Norris became something rare. He became a symbol. A man audiences associated with strength, control, and unstoppable confidence. His screen image was simple, but powerful. He stood for justice. He fought the bad guys. He protected the innocent. He did not need long speeches. He needed one stare, one stance, one clean strike, and the audience understood. But his fame also turned into humor. The internet transformed him into a legend beyond reality, with jokes that made him almost superhuman. And strangely, that kept him alive in popular culture for a new generation. Some stars fade when their era ends. Chuck Norris crossed eras. From martial arts films to television. From action hero to meme. From serious fighter to cultural punchline that was actually affectionate. That kind of longevity is not normal. It means people did not just remember his work, they remembered the idea of him. Toughness, discipline, survival, the man who never backed down. And even when audiences laughed at the exaggerated legend, they were still paying tribute to the screen image he built. He became more than an actor. He became a piece of pop culture language. And that does not happen by accident. It happens when a performer leaves a mark so clear that people can turn it into myth. Nicholas Brendon will always be remembered by many as Xander Harris, the ordinary young man in a world full of vampires, witches, watchers, and chosen ones. That role mattered because Xander was human. He had no superpowers, no ancient destiny, no magical bloodline. He survived through loyalty, humor, fear, mistakes, and heart. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he represented the friend who stays, the person who may not be the strongest, but still shows up when it counts. For fans, Xander was not perfect, and maybe that is why he felt real. He could be funny, insecure, brave, jealous, kind, foolish, and sincere. That mix made him memorable. Nicholas Brendon became part of one of the most beloved television ensembles of the late 90s and early 2000s. And when a show becomes part of people's emotional lives, every cast member becomes connected to that memory. His passing, close to the loss of Anthony Head, made Buffy fans feel something deeper than nostalgia. It felt like a chapter closing, because that series was about growing up while surrounded by darkness. And now the people who helped tell that story are becoming part of another kind of darkness. The darkness of memory. But fans will keep returning to those episodes. They will hear the jokes again. They will watch the friendships form again. They will see Xander standing beside Buffy again. And for a while, the person who played him will feel present. That is one of the strange gifts of television. It preserves people at the age we first loved them. Tom Kane gave his life to voices. And voice actors have a special kind of immortality. Many people may not recognize their faces, but they know the sound. They know the rhythm. They know the characters brought to life through nothing but breath, tone, timing, and imagination. Tom Kane voiced Yoda in Star Wars animation for years, carrying one of the most recognizable characters in science fiction. That is not an easy task. To step into a voice that fans already love is a challenge. You are not just performing, you are protecting a legacy. He also voiced Professor Utonium in the Powerpuff Girls, adding warmth, intelligence, and gentle humor to a character who became part of childhood for millions. Voice acting is often underestimated. But think about it. A voice actor has no costume to hide behind, no facial expression to help the audience, no physical movement on screen. They must create a person through sound alone. Tom Kane did that again and again. His work reached children, Star Wars fans, animation lovers, and people who may never have known his name but knew his voice instantly. That is a quiet kind of fame. But it is powerful. Because voices stay with us. They echo in memory. They return when we hear an old episode, a game, a cartoon, a line delivered exactly the way we remembered it. And in that way, Tom Kane's work continues to speak. Demond Wilson became part of television history through Sanford and Son. As Lamont Sanford, he played the son trying to manage his father, his future, his frustrations, and the chaos of everyday life. The show was funny, but it also had texture. It came from a time when sitcoms were changing, becoming sharper, more direct, more connected to real communities and real family dynamics. Demond Wilson had the difficult job of standing beside a huge comedic personality and still holding his own. That is not easy. In comedy, the louder performer often gets the attention. But the straight man, the reacting partner, the person grounding the scene, is often the reason the comedy works. Wilson understood that balance. He could be annoyed, loving, exhausted, hopeful, and funny without forcing it. He helped create a father-son dynamic that audiences remembered for decades. And that matters. Because sitcoms are not just jokes, they are rooms we return to. Living rooms, kitchen tables, arguments, catchphrases, characters who feel like neighbors. Demend Wilson helped build one of those rooms. And for many viewers, that room will always be open. Patrick Muldoon was part of a different universe of entertainment. Soap operas, science fiction films, television dramas, and cult favorites. He appeared in Days of Our Lives, where soap actors carry a special kind of workload. People sometimes underestimate soap opera acting, but it requires stamina, memory, emotional speed, and the ability to live inside dramatic situations day after day. He also appeared in Starship Troopers, a film that grew from a science fiction action movie into a cult classic discussed for its satire, violence, style, and strange power. Actors like Muldoon often become familiar in ways audiences do not immediately measure. They appear in shows people watch daily. They become part of routines. They step into films that fans revisit years later. They may not always be the biggest name on the poster, but they help build the worlds people remember. And in Hollywood, that matters. Because the industry is not only made of superstars, it is made of working actors who keep stories alive, scene by scene, episode by episode, year after year. Donald Gibb was one of those faces viewers never forgot. Big presence, big energy, a physical style that made him stand out instantly. In Revenge of the Nerds, he became Ogre, a character loud enough to become iconic in the world of 80s comedy. In Bloodsport, he stood beside Jean-Claude Van Damme in a film that became part of martial arts movie history. Some actors are remembered for subtlety. Others are remembered because the moment they enter a scene, the room changes. Donald Gibb was the second kind. He brought force, humor, size, a kind of wild screen energy that made him impossible to ignore. Those roles may have belonged to a specific era, but that era still has loyal fans. People still watch those films. They still quote them. They still recognize the faces. And when someone like Donald Gibb passes, fans are not only mourning the actor, they are mourning the feeling of an entire film era. The video store era. The late-night cable era. The time when one memorable supporting character could live forever because fans kept replaying the tape. Michael Pennington represented the world of stage as much as screen. Many knew him from Star Wars, where even a smaller role in that universe can become part of cinematic history forever. But his life in acting went far beyond one film. He was a theater man. A performer shaped by language, discipline, and the demands of live performance. Stage actors understand something that screen actors do not always experience in the same way. There is no second take. No edit, no camera angle to save the moment. There is only the actor, the audience, and the truth of that night. Michael Pennington carried that tradition. He worked as an actor, director, and writer. He belonged to the craft side of performance, the side built on rehearsal rooms, scripts, voice, posture, and years of devotion. When we remember screen stars, we often remember images. But theater artists leave a different legacy. They leave influence. Students, productions, interpretations, a standard of seriousness. And for people who love acting as an art, that kind of legacy is priceless. James Tolkien had one of the most recognizable stern faces in film. In Back to the Future, he became Mr. Strickland, the authority figure who seemed permanently disappointed in the younger generation. In Top Gun, he brought that same hard-edged presence to a different world. Some actors become memorable because they know exactly what kind of energy they bring. Tolkien had intensity, he had sharpness, he had the look of a man who would not tolerate nonsense. And filmmakers used that brilliantly. He could walk into a scene and instantly create pressure. That is a skill. Not every actor needs to be soft, charming, or emotionally open. Some actors become unforgettable because they represent rules, discipline, and conflict. James Tolkien did that so well that audiences remembered him after only a few lines. That is screen power. To make a small role feel permanent. To create a character people can imitate decades later. To become part of the rhythm of a classic film. He did that. And because those films continue to travel from one generation to the next, his work will continue meeting new audiences. Kei Hiroyuki Tagawa became unforgettable through presence. Many fans know him as Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat. A villain with elegance, menace, and a voice that could make a simple line feel dangerous. In fantasy and action films, villains are crucial. A weak villain makes the hero look smaller. A strong villain makes the entire story rise. Tagawa understood how to bring authority to villainy. He did not need chaos. He had control. He had stillness. He had a way of looking at the hero as if victory was already decided. That is what made him memorable. He appeared in many films and shows across decades, often bringing gravity and command to the screen. For fans of Mortal Kombat, his performance became definitive. Not just a version of a character. The version. That is rare. When audiences hear one line and immediately hear the actor's voice in their head, the performance has crossed into legend. And Tagawa achieved that. Patrick Godfrey belonged to a long tradition of British character actors who make every production richer. He appeared in period pieces, dramas, and films where a quiet supporting role can add elegance and credibility. In Ever After, he played Leonardo da Vinci, bringing warmth and wisdom to a fairy tale world. That kind of role requires delicacy. Too much, and it becomes silly. Too little, and it disappears. Godfrey brought charm. He made the character feel gentle, clever, and alive. Character actors like him are the hidden architecture of film and television. They may not always be the face on the poster, but they give stories depth. They make worlds feel populated. They make scenes feel complete. And when they are gone, viewers begin to realize how often they were there. In the background of beloved films, in the corners of television dramas, in the roles that quietly held everything together. That is a career worth honoring. Rob Reiner was not only an actor. He was a storyteller who helped shape American comedy and film. As an actor, he became famous through All in the Family, playing Michael Stivic, a role that placed him at the center of one of television's most important cultural conversations. But as a director, his impact became even wider. Stand By Me. The Princess Bride. When Harry Met Sally. Misery. A Few Good Men. These are not just films. They are part of the language of cinema. Different genres, different tones, different audiences, yet each one has endured. That tells you something about Reiner's understanding of story. He knew friendship. He knew romance. He knew tension. He knew comedy. He knew how to let actors breathe. A director's legacy is different from an actor's legacy. Actors leave performances. Directors leave worlds. Rob Reiner left many worlds. A childhood summer by the railroad tracks. A fairy tale filled with wit and adventure. A love story built on timing and honesty. A nightmare inside a lonely house. A courtroom where one line became immortal. That kind of career is extraordinary. And when a storyteller like that dies, the loss reaches across multiple generations of viewers. Because each generation may have loved a different film. But they were all touched by the same creative mind. Brigitte Bardot belonged to an older kind of stardom. The kind that changed fashion, beauty, cinema, and public imagination. In the 1950s and 60s, she became one of the most photographed and discussed women in the world. Her screen presence carried freedom, rebellion, glamour, and danger. She represented a shift in European cinema, a break from older images of femininity, a new kind of star who seemed untamed by the rules around her. But Bardot's legacy was also complicated, as real lives often are. Fame does not make a person simple. It magnifies everything. The beauty, the talent, the contradictions, the controversies, the influence. To remember a figure like Bardot is to remember both the power of the image and the complexity of the person behind it. She shaped cinema history. She shaped style. She became an icon long before the internet made icons easy to create and easy to forget. Her image lasted because it was tied to an era, and some stars do not simply appear in history, they become symbols of it. Bud Cort became a cult legend through Harold and Maude. That film was strange, tender, dark, funny, and unlike almost anything else. As Harold, he played loneliness in a way that was both absurd and deeply sad. The role connected with audiences who felt different, misunderstood, or out of step with the world. Cult films survive differently from blockbusters. They do not always explode at first. They travel quietly. From friend to friend. From late-night screening to college dorm. From one lonely viewer to another. Harold and Maude became that kind of film. And Bud Cort became the face of its peculiar soul. His career included many other roles, but that performance alone gave him a permanent place in film memory. Some actors become famous because millions watch them all at once. Others become beloved because the right people find them at the right time. Bud Cort belonged to that second category, the kind of actor whose work feels like a secret passed between people who needed it. And that is a beautiful kind of legacy. Peter Green had a face built for danger. In The Mask, he became Dorian, slick, sharp, and threatening. In Pulp Fiction, he played Zed, a character audiences never forgot, even if they wished they could. That is the power of a fearless supporting actor. He stepped into dark roles and made them convincing. He brought discomfort to the screen. And while not every character he played was easy to watch, that was often the point. Stories need shadows. They need people who make the audience nervous. They need performers willing to be disliked, feared, or remembered for the wrong reasons inside the story. Peter Green did that. He became part of films that defined the 1990s. And because those films remain constantly discussed, quoted, and rediscovered, his presence remains alive inside them. Not every legacy is soft. Some are sharp. Some are unsettling. Some remind us that acting is not always about being loved. Sometimes it is about being unforgettable. And he was. Isaiah Whitlock Jr. gave one of television's most memorable line deliveries in The Wire. But reducing him to one famous moment would be unfair. He was an actor with intelligence, patience, and a deep understanding of rhythm. In The Wire, he played Senator Clay Davis, a character who represented corruption, survival, charisma, and shameless political instinct. He could make audiences laugh and feel disgusted in the same scene. That balance is difficult. The Wire is often called one of the greatest television series ever made because it understood systems, institutions, and human weakness. Whitlock's performance fit perfectly inside that world. He made Clay Davis feel both entertaining and painfully real. That is the kind of acting that gives a show texture, the kind that turns a supporting character into a cultural memory. Beyond The Wire, he worked across film and television for years, always bringing presence and precision. He was one of those actors who made every scene better simply by entering it. And those actors deserve to be remembered. Because television history is not only built by leads, it is built by the people who make the world around the leads feel alive. Joy Harmon came from an earlier Hollywood era. Many remember her from Cool Hand Luke, where a single scene became famous enough to follow her for the rest of her life. That is one of the strange things about film. Sometimes one appearance, one moment, one image can become permanent. Actors do not always control what audiences remember. A scene can escape the film. It can become part of movie history. It can be discussed, replayed, referenced, and recognized for decades. Joy Harmon experienced that kind of screen immortality. But she also appeared in other films and television shows, contributing to the entertainment world of her time. To younger viewers, her name may not be instantly familiar. But to lovers of classic cinema, her presence belongs to an era when movies created images that stayed in the public mind for generations. And in the end, that is what screen acting can do. It can take one moment from one person's life and preserve it far beyond the years they lived. John Nolan appeared in major films and television, including the world of Batman. For many viewers, a familiar face in a superhero film becomes part of a larger mythology. These roles may be brief, but they connect actors to stories that millions carry with them. He also appeared in Person of Interest, a series that built a devoted following through questions of surveillance, morality, technology, and human choice. Actors like Nolan give credibility to these worlds. They may not always be centered, but they make the story feel grounded. And that matters deeply in genres that ask audiences to believe in extraordinary circumstances. A grounded actor can make fantasy feel real. A steady performance can make a complicated story easier to enter. John Nolan gave that steadiness, and his work remains inside the films and shows fans continue to revisit. Joe Negri lived a remarkable creative life. Jazz guitarist, educator, actor, for many, he will be remembered as Handyman Negri from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That alone is a beautiful legacy. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was not just children's television. It was kindness turned into a format. It was patience, music, gentleness, human dignity. To be part of that world meant contributing to something that helped children feel safe and seen. Joe Negri brought music and warmth into that space. And beyond the screen, his work as a musician and teacher meant that his influence reached people directly. Students, listeners, families, children. Some entertainers chase fame. Others build community. Joe Negri belonged to the second group. And that kind of life leaves echoes that are not always measured in headlines. They are measured in people who learned something, felt comforted, or discovered music because he was there. As we remember all these names, there is a pattern. Not all of them were the same kind of famous. Some were Oscar winners. Some were television icons. Some were cult favorites. Some were voice actors. Some were comedians. Some were villains. Some were mentors. Some were faces we recognized instantly but could not always name. But together, they remind us what entertainment really is. It is not just fame, it is not just red carpets, it is not just awards, interviews, posters, or headlines. It is memory. It is the actor who made your father laugh, the movie your mother watched every Christmas, the show you played after school, the villain who scared you, the mentor who comforted you, the comedy line your friends repeated for years, the voice from a cartoon you never forgot, the film you watched during a hard time and somehow felt better afterward. That is why these losses matter, because performers become part of our private lives without ever knowing us. They sit beside us in dark rooms. They fill quiet houses with sound. They turn ordinary evenings into memories. And when they leave, we feel the distance between the person and the performance. The person is gone, but the performance remains. That is the miracle and sadness of film and television. The screen keeps people alive in a way nothing else can. Robert Duvall will still sit in quiet rooms with impossible authority. Catherine O'Hara will still make audiences laugh with one strange word. James Van Der Beek will still be young beside the creek, dreaming too loudly. Eric Dane will still walk through hospital corridors with charm and pain in his eyes. Anthony Head will still stand in the library, guiding a chosen one through darkness. Chuck Norris will still fight with the calm certainty of an action legend. Tom Kane's voice will still travel through galaxies and cartoons. Rob Reiner's stories will still bring people together. And all the others, whether known by millions or loved by devoted fans, will continue to appear whenever someone presses play. So maybe the real ending is not goodbye. Maybe it is this. Thank you. Thank you for the scenes. Thank you for the laughter. Thank you for the fear, the comfort, the drama, the strange characters, the unforgettable voices, and the moments we did not realize would become part of us. Thank you for giving your time, your talent, and your life to stories, because stories are how people survive time. And as long as these stories are watched, shared, remembered, and loved, something of each performer remains. The curtain has fallen, the lights have dimmed, but the screen is still glowing. And somewhere, right now, someone is discovering them for the first time. That is legacy. That is cinema. That is why we remember.